Bill Finch, Mayor of Bridgeport, and very, very grateful to have all of you here today to help us fight against violence in our city. Many of you have been fighting this a long time. I know the chief has, the governor has, the senator and the congressman have. As you know, there was a shooting last evening. I'd like to just address that right off the bat. This was a coordinated effort, much the way the governor is helping us to coordinate during Project Longevity. This was corrections, state police, and Bridgeport police trying to interdict illegal weapons and get them off our streets. And I just wanted to point that out because it was certainly a sobering reminder of how dangerous that our police work is and how lethal these weapons can be on our streets. But Bridgeport's crime rate overall this year is down 20%. Homicides are down by about half, and shooting incidences are down by over 20%. But having said that, we have to also remind ourselves that 33 people in America every day are killed with guns. And the U.S. Conference of Mayors, as well as Mayors Against Illegal Guns, where the governor and I were together as mayors working hard for many years under the leadership of Mike Bloomberg and Tom Menino. This is, I think, the way the country can move in the right direction, having Republicans and Democrats as mayors, chief elected officials working, as well as independents, Democrats, Republicans, and independents working to keep our streets safer. We have a wide range of participants today. I want to get to all of them. We have community organizations and community leaders, lawmakers, and much like the way the governor and the Justice Department have helped us form Project Longevity with a coalition of all the interested persons, that's what we have here today. I especially want to thank the people in red in our audience. You are not alone. Yana is one of the most uplifting organizations. Their message is very somber, but very, very, very strong. They will not be put down by the violence that's affected their family. They will talk about it, they will witness to it, and they will help us pull together as a community. I'd like to give them a round of applause for doing that. I'm particularly excited about two initiatives that you're going to hear about from people who know far more about it than I. One is Project Longevity, where there are carrots and sticks with the people that are within the system or marginally involved with the system. And I'd like to give a shout out to the state coordinator who was Carl Horton, right here in the front row. Local guy. The governor hired well. He hired a Bridgeport guy to run this.
Local guy, that's it, right there.
And we also are going to have a new initiative announced shortly, Street Safe Bridgeport, which will be hiring street outreach workers. Some of them former members of the corrections system, participants in that, and they have a first-hand knowledge and they have credibility of the street. So we're all moving in the right direction, but we never can rest on our laurels. And the governor certainly is not doing that. He's taken the bull by the horns on this issue, and I want to welcome him formally to the city of Bridgeport. And before we go around the room, hear from the governor and hear his remarks.
Great. Well, it's great to be with all of you. Actually, I was going to start with the ladies in red. These are mothers who have lost their babies, their children, and have decided to devote a good portion of their lives to making sure that other people are not in the same position. I've gotten to know these wonderful women. Had a wonderful meeting in my office in the last, about 3 weeks ago, and their commitment is to be honored. It's not everybody who can take an absolute disaster in one's family and turn it into something good, and you all have found a way to do that, so thank you. And it is a reminder that there are different types of crime and different motivations for crime, but we all have to come together to work on this issue. I want to thank the Senator for being with us today, and Congressman Himes, Commissioner Zarenda, who has been the acting commissioner, and as of today, I have recommended that he be the permanent commissioner at Corrections. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yes, I made this right. Mayor, thank you for your leadership. Chief, thank you for your leadership. I think you all are doing good work. The numbers that the mayor has mentioned are significant, and I hope only a beginning as we really bring these programs home over the years to come. This needs to be a sustained effort. This is not a fly-by-night. This just doesn't happen suddenly and you disappear and you continue to get good results. In fact, it's been proven that when you have good results, if you back away from the ideas that got those good results, you're going to pretty quickly return to where you were. I also have to say that I'm gratified by how many people are here and interested in this. You know, I've started these meetings around the state as governor. You're probably not used to seeing the governor in your community as often as you've seen me, and certainly not with as difficult an issue such as crime in our urban areas. But this is something that I and my team of people have worked on day in and day out. We had a great meeting, Chief, not so long ago at the police department. This is a different iteration with a whole bunch of other folks who are now in and buying into what we're trying to do. I've had these meetings in Norwalk. I've had these meetings in Waterbury. I've had these meetings in New Haven. I've had these meetings in Bridgeport. I've had these meetings in Hartford. I've had these meetings in Norwich. I've had these meetings in New Britain. Many of those being the communities that generate so much of our crime. But then if you even boil it down further and understand that the vast majority of homicides that will be committed and have been committed in this state thus far this year actually come into just a handful of communities, and we have a laser-like focus on eliminating guns or lessening guns and the influence of guns on our streets, taking the best practices that are available to us from around the country. We know what works. What we have failed to sustain in Connecticut is the resolve to apply what works on an ongoing and, quite frankly, permanent basis. Where we do those sorts of things, in places like Boston and places like Providence and elsewhere, we can actually make solid gains, the likes of which the mayor has proudly represented to you. Now, he'd be the first person to tell you that a 20% reduction is only a start, because really we need to get to the 50 and then to the 60% range for us to feel really comfortable. And we need to do that year after year after year. But we are having some impact. The reality is that by working together and making legislative changes and strategic investments, which I'll touch upon, we have made some great progress. But the truth is that we have a long way to go in convincing our young people to stop shooting one another. While Bridgeport has seen an impressive 47% decline in homicides since last year, young people are continuing to kill other young people, often for no discernible reason. We're losing young people, and as a result of losing those young people, a whole nother generation of young people are growing up without one of their parents. That's a reality. This year we passed far-reaching gun legislation, which includes common sense regulation that will aid law enforcement regardless of whether you live in an urban center or one of our smaller cities or towns. But the reality is that over the past few years, we have worked with the state's largest cities to implement and expand urban crime efforts. And we are working to support enhanced programming that results in fewer crimes and safer streets, some of which will be talked about. We have a plan in Project Longevity, which has great potential to lower violent crime in New Haven, where it's been underway for a period of time, and Bridgeport and Hartford communities that we're bringing it to. And I would note that I know that you've had your first call-in under Project Longevity in Bridgeport, and I appreciate that. We know that the vast majority of gun crimes are in fact committed in a fairly small number, by a fairly small number of people in each of just a handful of cities. But to achieve our goal, we must also focus on winning the support of key members of the community. That's why I'm really happy that you're all here. We need to convince parents, the clergy, neighborhood leaders, grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, brothers, and sisters. Everyone needs to be working towards the goal of ending violence in our urban environments. Curbing violence takes everyone in the community to stand up together in unison and say, enough is enough. We've lost enough of our babies, our children, our brothers, our fathers, and we have to stay diligent on this issue. We will not tolerate gun violence in any of our neighborhoods. We will not tolerate gun violence around our schools, and we will not allow our communities to be taken over by thugs. We can reduce gun violence. We can make our neighborhoods safe. It has been done elsewhere, and we can do it here, and we are, in fact, making progress towards that goal. We will not allow another generation to live in fear of violence. We will not accept innocent bystanders getting caught up in the wave of violence that, and quite frankly, being the victims of that violence is unacceptable. We know that our children will be less likely to commit crimes if they have opportunity, and our state is prioritizing the flow of resources to programs that offer career development, youth workforce development, and college preparation. We may hear some of that today as well. We know our streets will be safer if we commit to funding programs that provide our youth with after-school programs, essential drug and alcohol prevention programs, crisis interventions, and gang interventions. This year, we awarded $3.5 million in youth violence prevention grants, new grants, to organizations that offer those exact programs, with $671,000 of that coming to providers here in the greater Bridgeport area. This money goes directly to services that help young people stay on the right track, thrive in school, and get help where and when it is needed. It is a start. These programs are valuable and have shown early success in the cities where we have begun implementation, including Bridgeport, and the grants will ensure that our organizations can keep their doors open so that they can give services to the most vulnerable. My administration is dedicated to funding these kinds of services that encourage young people to stay engaged in their community and get the assistance they need to become contributing members of our society. As everyone here knows, one of the most effective ways to keep young people from getting involved in criminal activity is to offer them opportunities and to keep them engaged in the communities in which they live. But the state will not simply write a blank check. Organizations that receive these monies from the state need to show that they are making an impact. You need to be held accountable. They can show, if you can show that you're making a meaningful impact with data collection, with benchmarking and evaluation, my administration will fight for the dollars to keep flowing to your organizations. If the opposite proves true, then we need to take that money from those who are not being effective and apply it to those who are. And that is So with that, again, I want to applaud all of you for being as engaged as you are, and I can assure you I will remain committed to this very issue. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Governor. I hope you don't mind me also, one person who's not here who joins us in our fight here in Bridgeport is the First Lady, Kathy Malloy, who helps us to fight against domestic violence, which is obviously part and parcel of the gun violence issue. So I want to thank her in absentia for the great work she's doing here with our Center for Women and Families. We're going to go around the room and introduce everybody at the table. Then we're going to hear from Senator Blumenthal and Representative Himes. Lydia?
Lydia Martinez, good afternoon, Councilwoman for the East Side of Bridgeport.
Reverend Simon Castillo, Bridgeport Commissioner, Police Commissioner.
Charles Tisdale, Director of ABCD.
James Renner, Commissioner for Department of Correction.
John Smirga, State's Attorney for the Fairfield Judicial District.
Charlie Grady, Project Manager for Project Longevity here in Bridgeport.
Adam Radzimirski, Deputy Chief, Bridgeport Police Department, in charge of investigative services.
And I'm Joe Gaudette, the Bridgeport Police Chief.
Well, and Don?
Charles Clemens, State Representative, Bridgeport.
Tony Canary, Executive Director of Pivot Ministries.
Thomas Ord, President of Pivot Community Development Corporation.
Ron Cinciero, Executive Director of Connecticut Against Gun Violence.
Bob Francis, Director of Bryce Staff and the lead agency for the Street Safe Bridgeport Project.
Carl McCluster, Pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church, and member of the NRZ leadership team, and sitting in the seat for the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance until Pastor Gidner gets here today.
Trevor Johnson is on probation. I'm here on behalf of my boss, Executive Director William Carbone.
I also want to mention that there's a couple other councilmen, Councilman Blunt, Council President McCarthy. Is there anybody else from the City Council? I can't see back there. Jack Banta and Anita Martinez. Wonderful. Also, somebody, I know he likes to blend into the woodwork, but my classmate at UConn, Mike Lawler, who has been my other brain on this issue, helping me formulate ideas. Thanks, Mike, for being here. We're really honored to have both Senator Blumenthal and Congressman Himes here, and as you know, the national debate that the Mayors Against Illegal Guns has been pushing is the background checks, the assault weapon ban, and a real gun trafficking piece of legislation, which gun trafficking law, which we really don't have. So I think I'll start with the senator because that's one of his babies.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here. This cross-section of the community, I think, shows that we are united as a community and as a state. I want to thank Mayor Finch and Chief Gaudette for their leadership in Bridgeport, really at ground zero. You guys have been there in the trenches and you've really walked the walk. And the governor has been a leader, not only in Connecticut, but nationally on this issue of gun violence prevention. And he has led the legislature, and I want to thank the legislators who are here and not here for their courage and strength. Yesterday, as everybody knows, the report on the Newtown tragedy revived for many of us the unspeakable memories of that day. The governor and I were there at Sandy Hook within hours of the shooting, and the gripping graphic detail of that report revived the memories of what gun violence can do to a community. But we're here to say that all communities share the commitment to ending it, and all communities are affected by it. Since Newtown, 10,916 people have died as a result of gun violence. 10,916 people. 194 children. Not counting the 20 who were killed in Newtown. 194 children have died as a result of guns in America. And 523 teenagers. These deaths are senseless. They are unimaginable in a civilized nation, the greatest country in the history of the world, and they are preventable. They are avoidable. And the message today is from you, not from us, but from you, we're not going to take it. Enough is enough. Each of you is here to take a stand and speak out, but do more than just speak to help lead this community. And there are three principles of Project Longevity. First, the community saying gun violence is unacceptable. Second, for those who may be tempted to commit it, there's help. As the governor just outlined, it's not just about law enforcement, it is about helping through social programs, education, health care, intervention. And third, if you commit it, the consequences are going to be clear and certain. There's a reason that penalties are aggravated for gun violence, for the use of guns in commission of a crime. And I say this as a former federal prosecutor, as a law enforcement person. Guns change everything. They transform lives in an instant. 20 kids were killed in less than 5 minutes by 154 rounds. A high-capacity magazine, an assault weapon. Guns can change lives in an instant. And so we need law enforcement. I want to salute the state police, the FBI, the Department of Justice, our federal prosecutors, as well as state prosecutors for their steadfast and strong work. But what we need is also better laws. And that's why I am committed to continuing this effort to achieve background checks, a ban on high-capacity magazines and assault weapons, a mental health initiative, as well as federal penalties on straw purchases and illegal trafficking. Think of it. In our country, guns can come from South Carolina to Connecticut. We have strong laws here, but the borders are porous, guns have no respect for state boundaries, and we are at the mercy of those guns that are illegally trafficked. So we need federal penalties against straw purchases and illegal trafficking. And I will just close on this note, because we're really here to listen. I too want to salute the parents and loved ones who are here, and particularly the parents from Newtown. You know, I know the governor and all of us feel the same way. Barely a day goes by. In fact, I will tell you, not a day goes by when I don't think of those parents. I have on my wrist one of the bracelets that I got within a few days of the shooting, which says, "We choose love. We are Newtown." You know, that's really why you're here, because you love the children, people of all ages who may be victims of gun violence. And you're doing everything you can to save them. And with that kind of community effort, I think we can prevail. But most important, Connecticut has been a model for the nation. And we need to keep it moving in that direction to prevent deaths in the future, to bring down the numbers. But every one of them is one too many. Every death by gun violence is one too many. And every one of them we can prevent if we have the resolve and the resilience that those families in Newtown do, and that the moms who are here today and all the people of Bridgeport have demonstrated, and again, the law enforcement guys who are here doing their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman?
Thank you, Mayor. The governor and the senator laid out the challenges and the efforts that are being made very eloquently, so I don't want to cover that ground again. I just want to observe. I suspect that some of you are feeling what I'm feeling right now, which is that once again we come together as a community to talk about the incredible amount of work, the legislating, the cultural change, the advocacy that needs to be done to make progress. And we do it at a time when the state of Connecticut and the state of New Jersey, the state of New York aside, we just haven't seen nearly the kind of change that we would like to see. And that's frustrating. This is probably my 30th or 40th event where we've come together to say this is a problem, we've got to address it. And we've got, and I frequently get asked the question, you know, what can I do when I hear about the stories that the mothers from Yana tell, or when I read the report on Newtown and I'm reminded of the tragedy, what can I do? And that's a hard question to answer, because gun violence is a complicated thing. There's no single solution that we can do to make it go away. It is better access to mental health care for those people like Adam Lanza, where the warning lights were blinking, and it should be easy, not hard, to take those people who are mentally disturbed, hurt, who have illness, and put them into an environment where they can get better, rather than isolating them in a basement where they may just get worse and do something unspeakable. We have made a little bit of progress on that. Those of you who follow this stuff know that the president announced a couple of weeks ago something called mental health care parity, which says that insurance companies will treat mental health issues and illnesses with all of the seriousness and resources that they treat physical illnesses. That's a small step forward. And of course, we have a long way to go on the issue of guns. It is, when the senator and I are at these events, we're always a little embarrassed about the lack of action on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., because as he rightly points out, this is not a regional issue. This is an issue that guns moving from across states, that either gets solved as a nation or it doesn't really get solved. And as you all observed, and this is not a hit on the Senate, where I serve, this is a bigger challenge than it is in the Senate, but an idea that had 90% of the American people's support, universal background checks. How can you argue with that? If you're going to exercise your Second Amendment rights, we're going to make sure you're not a terrorist, we're going to make sure you don't have a history of violence. Failed in the Senate. And by the way, if it had passed in the Senate, it almost certainly would have failed in the House of Representatives. The way we fix that, of course, is to continue to come together, a little bit bewildered over what we feel is a lack of progress, and to recharge ourselves and to recommit ourselves to advocating for change. There is not one significant, meaningful, positive change that this country has achieved in 240 years that didn't come after great failures, after great setbacks, after violence. And I'm talking about the woman's right to vote. I'm talking about civil rights in the 1960s. It requires sustained commitment. It requires mothers who have lost their children to say, instead of holding my grief inside and in the privacy of my own home, I'm going to advocate. If they can do it, we can do it. Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. And it will even get through to the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives because we sustain our effort, because we sustain our commitment, because women say, I'm not sending my child to a house where there's a gun in the home, where girlfriends tell their boyfriends, I see nothing romantic or attractive about you having a gun under the seat. It is that kind of change and those kinds of demands that inevitably will allow us to someday gather and not feel a little bit frustrated over how much is yet to do and how many are the obstacles that we face. So take heart, as I do, as we get together now, probably for the 2 or 3 dozenth time, to recommit ourselves to what, if we keep doing this and putting pressure on and bringing about change, we'll get together sometime with better laws and a lot less violence.
Well, thank you from our federal representatives. You know, it was just the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, and if we had had background checks, it would probably be unlikely for a sharpshooter from the military who defected to our arch enemy, the Soviet Union, to have gotten a weapon through the mail as simply and as easy as he did for, I think, about $20. Something to think about. We're going to hear from Chief Gaudette and his Deputy Chief Razmersky, and then Charlie Grady about their efforts, and then after that we'll go to Bob Francis to talk about Safe Street Bridgeport. So let's start with the Chief and the Deputy Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad everybody could come today. I've been asked to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been doing that have led to some of the success that we've seen. And certainly, without getting into the weeds, it's my belief that so much of what's come out of the Bridgeport Police Department has come out as a result of the collaboration and cooperation with other law enforcement agencies, with social service agencies, and with the community. And while we're at this table, I'd like to single out certainly our Department of Corrections. We have an unprecedented partnership with the Department of Corrections in the last year and a half or so, and I'd like to thank the Commissioner for that. The intelligence that's provided through the Department of Corrections to our local department is just been so extremely valuable to us. So thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Also, our relationship with probation and parole is, again, it's unprecedented. A year or two ago, we wouldn't have those folks at the table. Now we meet weekly with them, and we talk about the most violent people, the most endangered people out on the street on a weekly basis, and we're able to really impact what happens on the street through the cooperation that we have. And one thing we put together at the mayor's urgence about a year and a half ago was something we call the Violent Crime Reduction Initiative, and it really is about focused deterrence for us. And Chief Razmersky has been spearheading that effort, and so I'd like for him to talk a little bit about the Violent Crime Reduction Initiative as it relates to what we do internally. But certainly externally, RISAP, Bob, I can't thank you enough for your partnership with the department. You'll hear later about Street Safe Boston. That's an initiative that is not a law enforcement initiative. It's a social service initiative, but we're using some of our law enforcement grant to support that. So it's a partnership that necessarily requires that separation, but certainly something that we support and that we're willing to try. So with our social service agencies, our community, Mayana girls, you know I love you. We do so much stuff together, and I'm looking forward to continuing our relationship as we move forward. But I'd like to turn it over for a second now to Deputy Chief Adam Razmersky to talk about our Violent Crime Reduction Initiative and how that all works together.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. Our Violent Crime Initiative is just another example of the collaboration that the Chief spoke about. It's a collaboration with all our law enforcement partners. We meet weekly. There are representatives of all branches of the Bridgeport Police Department, our investigative division, our patrol, division. We have probation, parole. And we know that most of the violence is in anywhere is caused by a small group of people. And so we try to identify those people, and we employ a strategy of focused deterrence, identifying those people and bringing them to everybody's attention and working collaboratively. And I think that's the key, is collaboratively. The partnerships that we've fostered over the years just serve us better and better every year. But it's not only law enforcement and probation and parole and all the people we get together with on a weekly basis, but it's also the community that's stepped up and as a result of seeing some of these bad actors being taken off the street, they step up even further, and they see that there's justice for the community when these actors are taken off, and once there's an increase in justice for the community, there's an increase in police legitimacy, which fosters more community involvement, and we're blessed to have that increased community involvement, and we just look forward to building it with Project Longevity.
Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you.
Charlie?
So I'd like to thank everyone for being here, first of all, and the community. A couple things I want to just sort of point out. As project manager for the City of Bridgeport's Project Longevity, I cannot express to you how important this forum is, and the faces that I see in this room today are to me. I get a battery charge in my back every morning because I'm working with a community that really is energized and eager to see change happen. That's what it's all about, and you've heard from all the officials here at the table talking about the collaborative effort. I'm not going to bore people with all the details of how that works, but in a nutshell, the community, law enforcement, and service providers, along with clergy, have created a network here in Bridgeport. And again, I've been around this state for 27 years, involved with public service. What I see happening in Bridgeport right now, and again, the faces in this room alone, they're not just here for this meeting. I see these people at every meeting relative to their community. I see these same faces at every project launch, at every individual thing that is being put forward to bring positive change to Bridgeport. So these are the soldiers that are getting it done. And so I just want to acknowledge that of all these individuals that I've met here today. You guys give me the energy to put Project Longevity up front and make it happen. So to that, I'm going to take a second to give a little bit of an overview and where we are today with Project Longevity. So as most of you know, it's been up and running in New Haven for a year. We just celebrated the 1-year anniversary. They've had some great success in New Haven, although the numbers might not reflect that because those numbers don't include group or gang-related shootings. It has to be broken out that way to see the real impact of what Project Longevity is focused on. Here in Bridgeport, just like Project Longevity, Hartford, New Haven, we are dedicated to making a difference in group and gang-related shootings and homicides. That is the strategy in a nutshell, and the way that's accomplished is open communication. Communication through law enforcement, communication through community service providers and community. For the past 5 months, I've been sort of working behind the scenes, behind the curtain, making sure that we set up committees that would address the needs of some of these young individuals who are involved in group or gang life. We've set those committees up over the past few months, working in partnership with Bob Francis from RIASAP. Took a trip to Boston with Bob to sort of get the outreach workers in place as sort of a follow-up to the launch of Project Longevity. Working with Yale, University of New Haven, and John Jay University on researching all of the group and gang activity in Bridgeport. So for about 5 months, all that work went in. Starting on July 8th, we had our first law enforcement meeting to talk about identifying the most violent groups in the city. That culminated with a call-in, which is probably the most impactful part of Project Longevity, to actually get the thing to launch. The mayor was a witness to the call-in. We brought in 25 members have been identified throughout the city of Bridgeport of being involved in group or gang activity over the past year. Those individuals were brought into a room and treated with respect. They were shown a film. They were anxious. I myself personally walked in and explained to them that there's no trickery and deceit here, that this is a program and a message that they needed to hear. Told them that they were going to be leaving at the end of that meeting, but they needed to hear from their own community that their community is fed up with the gun violence, that the community, including law enforcement, including service providers, were there to try to help them make a turn towards changing their life. Now, as you can expect, a lot of those young men didn't have trust, and so they didn't trust me, not knowing me. They didn't trust the law enforcement faces that might have been there. By the time we ended that call-in, we had 11 individuals remain and stay in the room to talk with an assistant U.S. attorney, law enforcement officials. The development of trust started there because they understood that the entire community, over 110 people that attended that call-in, were there trying to give them a second chance. So the environment that was created by all of these people in this room, the law enforcement officials, was an environment that made them understand that we are here trying to make you turn your life around. If you take one step in our direction, we have an entire service provider network that is willing to help you get the help you need, and we are going to give you priority, because as crazy as it may seem to give these individuals of this population priority, if we can get those individuals help, then that's one less person that is a suspect or a victim of a homicide, because we identify these individuals at being at risk of the next homicide or the next shooting. Again, the national average, we're told, is 6% after a call-in that remain and seek services that were offered to them. The message was powerful at the Bridgeport call-in. Right now, we're at a little over 30% of individuals who have received the message, reached out, made a call to myself or our staff, and sought help. Out of that 30%, we've met and placed 4 individuals in the services that they requested so far. Again, I stress to you that Bridgeport is superior in its service provider network. It's the original in the state, and it's working. The community sees what's happening and are getting more and more engaged and more involved. That's what's going to make Project Longevity work here in Bridgeport. It's going to make it work throughout the state. It's really all about communities saying, we're fed up, we're done, how can we get involved and help? And that's what's happening here in Bridgeport. And again, that's the energy that drives me. So if any of you have been in presentation and heard me talk about Project Longevity, you understand I'm passionate about it, because I mean what I'm talking about, because I'm seeing some results. Small steps lead to large success. And that's where we are at this point.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. You know, just a couple of out-of-the-box kind of things that you know, can necessarily come out of meetings like this that we've done. Through the leadership of the mayor, we've had a very successful gun buyback program where people can anonymously turn in their weapons for cash, and that's been extremely successful. We have the Joint Inspection Services Committee, which is a committee of all the city departments that the mayor's put together, all the city departments who have the ability to affect what happens in the community. And so rather than use a criminal approach to correcting things in neighborhoods, situations in neighborhoods, we're using a civil approach, and that's been tremendously effective. We've merged our police departments with the Board of Education and Board of Education Security, and the professionalism that's happened there, the information sharing that's happened there has really been a boon. And out of that has come an effort to reduce the number of school-based arrests, because our kids belong in school, not in jail. So you know, we've worked really hard with the Board of Education to make sure that the kids are staying in school and not being arrested for things that they should be disciplined for in school and not in court. And finally, some technology things that we're using through a grant that we received from the federal government. Thank you, Senator and Representative we've been able to put some cameras out in the public spaces, and we've been able to resolve some of these crimes as a result. And we're expecting that we'll be able to resolve more, and hopefully we'll receive more funds in the future to expand that, so that we can have cameras in the public spaces, so that we can keep our people safe. We've also, through the governor's office, we have Text-a-Tip, we have iWatch here in Bridgeport, and something just as simple as giving every one of our officers a city email has resulted in the exchange, a tremendous exchange of intelligence and information that's really helped us to solve these crimes in Bridgeport. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Chief. Bob?
Well, I, like Charlie and all the rest of you, want to thank you all for being here. We couldn't have done this without support from the state, from the federal government to get this thing kicked off. And nobody does this stuff alone. I mean, as I talk, you'll hear that, I mean, there are over 40 nonprofit service agencies in Bridgeport that are involved in this effort that are going to help make this a success, you know, as we're going forward. About a year ago, a number of us in this room were invited by the Fairfield County Community Foundation to be introduced to a program in Boston called Street Safe Boston. And we were quite excited after that. They had been up and running about 5-6 years. And we thought that if we ever got the opportunity, we'd love to bring something like that to Bridgeport. And so we got that opportunity with the funding that came down and the partnership we formed with the police department. And we're calling our project Street Safe Bridgeport. It's a model based on what Street Safe Boston did, and we had an exciting time with those folks a couple months ago, and we're continuing to use them, you know, consulting with us as we're going forward. So what's our goal in this process? Our goal with Street Safe Bridgeport is to take young people, gang and group involved, high-risk young people, ages 16 to 24, in order to support these young people, to get them out of the kind of life they have, you know, with the gangs and groups that they belong to. And the way we do this is that we've hired 4 outreach workers, and we've hired an outreach worker supervisor, Kenny Jackson, who all of you know. We were very, very excited to get Kenny on board with this because of his long-time experience working in the streets of Bridgeport with these young people. And we were fortunate through Kenny and through his connections to hire 4 absolutely terrific people who also have had that experience, you know, on the street out there. So what are they doing? They're out there building what we consider to be healthy relationships with these young people, gaining their trust and getting their trust to a point where we can offer them services and offer them help. Sometimes it takes, as one of our outreach workers is so fond of saying, we've got to walk them through the system because they are so mistrusting, you know, of the system that's been set up. Thank you, John. And so this is a very important part of the process. Working with Charlie at Project Longevity, and especially working with Dan Braccio at the Council of Churches, we've been able to identify a lot of this through the reentry roundtable that Dan has run for years through the Council of Churches. We've identified over 30 nonprofit agencies in Bridgeport willing to provide services to these people as they reach out for that service. That's absolutely critical in this process. We're not paying them anything. This is a nonprofit community coming together saying, we've got 4 or 5 slots here. We've got service providers come forward with jobs, you know, and so we're able to offer jobs. A lot of these young people aren't ready for jobs, so they need job training. And so organizations like Career Resources and people like that have bought into this process and are providing slots for us in that process. Substance abuse and mental health counseling organizations, education organizations, so that we can offer GEDs, or a number of these young people have graduated from high school, and maybe getting them into Housatonic or getting them into college, you know, and we can assist in that process for them. So we picked 5 target neighborhoods in Bridgeport. We've got our crew out there every day from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 9 o'clock. They start around 2 o'clock around the high schools, as high schools letting out. You know, if you're around our high schools in the afternoon, you'll see an awful lot of the Chiefs cruisers around. We know there's a lot of activity there, and that's our opportunity to build some relationships there. And so you'll see our crew out there. Kenny, I'd like to see what they look like, okay? So Kenny, if you'd stand up for a minute, you can see, this is like the warm weather outfit, the shirt he's got.
It's our logo.
But Kenny's also got the Street Safe logo on his back, so you'll see the guys with their jackets and out there on the street.
This is, the meeting doesn't have to stop because I have to leave, but a couple of points I wanted to cover. Charlie, do you want to touch on your program a little bit, just as one of the community-based programs?
It's really your program, you're paying for it.
Well,
In the program that we got funding for from the state, we start with the parents, and we think that that's important. And the parents come in to work with them. They sign a contract to work with their children. And there are a number of areas that we have worked in. An example, and the parents, they go through the process, and they came up with these ideas here that I'll recite to you. Anger management. They say that happens in their homes every day, but they don't know how to deal with it. So they came up with a strategy for that. Conflict resolution training. This is all preparing them to go forward. Job skills. There are very few jobs in the city, in most places, for 14 to 18 or 18 to 24. And we train them, we work with them, and we also work with the workplace in places the people out there. Interviewing skills, they're not there, and we work with them on that. And the parents, they wanted also, how to apply for a job. We look at this as a positive incentive, not disincentive, to get them involved in this. Dress for Success, we have them involved, teaching them how to dress for a job. So it's all about them, but it's also about their participation. Financial literacy, it's very important. At the end of the program, it's a 40-week program, Governor. They each get $1,000 to start a bank account. And we ask their parents to match it. So that's an incentive. And they work very hard. They meet with us at least once a week at my office. It's about 25 or 30 of them. The parents also, and then there are people from the community that's there to work with them. But it's everything they do is sort of a reward. It's academic support. And we used to call them the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but some other things here. And to prepare them for college. They've never been through it. They don't know what SATs, they don't know what that is. And what's happening now is we have the youth tutoring youth. The ones with the skills, they tutoring their friends. They learn how to write a resume. We work with them on that. And they have to come up with a project. So they are writing statements about crime, more specifically about their friends, and each one of them is 25 or 30. They've made a commitment to bring someone in who they know is on the wrong side of the law to the meetings and prepare them to do the things that they've learned. Once again, it's the coordination, the integration, and the focus of people sitting around this table today.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. A couple of things, if it's all right, Mayor. I just want everyone to know that we have, of the money that's been distributed in the greater Hartford area, City of Bridgeport Office of Revitalization has received a grant of $67,000. The Walter Luckett Foundation, $67,000. Bridgeport Police Activities League, $134,000. Regional Youth Adult Social Action Partnership, $44,000. Save Our Youth Connecticut, $44,000. Action for Bridgeport Community Development, $44,000. We heard about that program. Gang Resistance Education Training for the Bridgeport Police Department, $67,000. Family Reentry, $67,000. Village Initiative Project, $134,000. I rounded those out off. They're different numbers. Having said that, let me now turn Ariel Reich, who's standing over there and has worked with me for a number of years, oversees these grants and is overseeing the development of a program to measure results. So although the legislature has played a role in deciding who would get money, we're going to play a role in making sure, as I stated at the outset, that we do not fund organizations that cannot prove actual results. So people will be defunded as long as I'm governor if they're not showing real results. And Ariel is supposed to come up with a measurement vehicle to do that. We're about to make second quarter distributions. By the fourth quarter, we want to have a good idea who's spending money wisely and who's having results in Hartford and New Haven and in Bridgeport. So I'm a big believer that we got to measure something. If it's worth giving money to, it's worth measuring the results, and so we're going to do that. Finally, because I got to go, but we've done some interesting things, and the new commissioner has done some interesting things in the correction system, and I'll summarize them, and then you can correct me when I'm wrong. One of the most interesting things is that we are actively involved in our correction system in trying to break up gang membership, and this is a reality. That a lot of the folks who are involved in gang activity were selected by their gangs, in some cases because they're not the brightest bulbs in the place. They have demonstrated following tendencies as opposed to leadership tendencies. Very often they have intellectual difficulties like learning disabilities and the like. We're actually isolating those folks. We're giving them training on how to not be a member, making it clear why they've been chosen. And there is a certain reality about gang activity that we're more likely to catch the lower level person than we are the leader. Well, the reason we're more likely to catch the lower person is they've been selected for a reason, and they've been asked to carry out crimes for a reason. And I have to applaud the Commissioner and the Department of Corrections for engaging in that kind of activity inside the building, trying to break up activity outside of the building in the future. Did I correctly summarize it?
Perfectly.
Then the other thing I want to say that we are way out.
That's why you're going to be commissioner.
That's right. The other thing that we
All
are
in favor?
way out in front of, and I want to share this with folks because it actually has this service component. Our correction system, working with probation and parole folks, it is our goal that anyone that we come into contact with, either on a short-term basis, being held on bail, or a long-term basis because they're incarcerated, will have access to the Obamacare or the Medicaid portion of that no one will leave prison or jail without having that work filled out for them. Why is that important? There's a couple of reasons that's important. One is financial to the state, but most importantly, so that they can access the services that they need to turn their lives around. For instance, paying for ongoing treatment of mental difficulties, ongoing treatment for alcohol or drug abuse, is all going to be available come January 1st under that program to all adults earning up to 138% of the poverty rate. If we can make that connection, and the court system and the jail and the prison system is the right place to do it for a lot of the folks whose lives we're trying to turn around. So that's been a great result. I want to give you one other encouraging statistic. Not only have we cut down recidivism substantially in the last 3.5 years, or 3 years in the state of Connecticut, accelerating a trend that had been evident before that, but truly accelerating it at this point. We're also having some gains on the placing people with criminal records in jobs. About 535 people have been placed in jobs through various programs that we're conducting. So we get that this has got to be multifaceted, but the biggest multifacet that we have to work on is making sure that there's community involvement in the communities of interest, and that's what I'm seeing here in Bridgeport, and makes me feel so gratified about what we're doing. I have to tell you, when I started this thing, going around from town to town and going back from town to town or city to city, I was a little fearful because, ultimately, I suppose if there's failure in any one of these cities, because I stuck my neck out, I get blamed. But we're working with everybody. This is real to us. And we believe that if we get this right, Connecticut is a better place to raise a family. Connecticut is a better place to work. Connecticut will have a better trained workforce and will attract additional jobs. This is a continuum. And we see it as such, but the down payments are being made, and I want to thank all of you for doing that. I think I got those programs and numbers right as well, or pretty close, right? Not so far off that you want to give up your commissionership. So it's with that, I got to thank you, Mayor, Senator, and Congressman, and everybody who's around the table and everybody who came today. I think we are demonstrating that we're serious about our partnership with the city of Bridgeport and what we're trying to do here. So thank you very much. Thank you.